Law enforcement leadership is in trouble. Today, we speak to a man considered the voice of American law enforcement. Let's get going. Welcome to Courage Today. My name is Travis Yates, and I'm with a very special guest today. His name is Randy Sutton. He's a retired lieutenant from the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department with a total of 34 years of law enforcement experience. He's the author of the True Blue series of several books, also The Power of Legacy. He's also in the Screen Actors Guild. He's famous for several movie roles, including Casino. But more importantly today, he's the founder of Wounded Blue, known as the voice of American law enforcement. Randy, thank you so much for being here today.
Travis, it's always a pleasure to be on your show.
Man, you've been a great friend for many, many years, and you're the first one we thought of when we launched this podcast and video episode. And I know we talk about leadership every single week here, but we ask our guests the same question right off the chute, Randy, and that is, what is your definition of courageous leadership?
Courageous leadership. That's a really good question. I wish you had prepared me, because that's a question that really requires some deep thought.
What's the fun in that, huh?
Exactly. But I would say that courageous leadership is a compassionate and empathetic approach to leadership that bestows upon its the people that are being served a dignity, a trust that supervisor or that administrator or that leader has their back and will not bow to political pressure or allow personal feelings to interfere with the management and with the leadership abilities.
You listed a lot of traits there, Randy. If you could, obviously there's a lot of traits to being a courageous leader. It's vastly different as we talk about in our book and our seminars as what leadership is. I mean, let's face it, if the leadership courses and the leadership seminars were working, would we see what we're seeing today in law enforcement?
Boy, I'm telling you, I on my radio show and also in my writing, leadership is probably the number one topic that comes up. In a whole bunch of different instances. I mean, we have seen the diminishment of integrity within leadership declining over the years. And when we have seen recently many instances in which the chiefs or the higher ups in administrations are really quick to bow to political pressure and basically just throw their own people under the bus in every conceivable fashion, from discipline to actual charging in certain situations when it's just not applicable. But because it's politically convenient or expedient, we're seeing that over and over again.
Yeah, and the unfortunate thing is I think these cowards is what we call them. You know, we made a decision a few years ago. Let's call this what it is. We've been beating around the bush long enough. If you will not defend law enforcement that's doing their job, that's doing what's right. We're not talking about defending people that are wrong. If you will not defend officers that are doing their job, I can't think of a better word than coward, because they are literally ruining this profession.
I couldn't agree more. I have, you and I have talked in the past about the leadership issues, but this is such a widespread problem that it actually affects the physical and emotional well-being of hundreds of thousands of law enforcement officers across the United States. That's why I'm so happy that you're taking it on head on, because as the leader of an organization, the Wounded Blue, which is the National Assistance and Support Organization for Injured and Disabled Law Enforcement Officers, I literally deal with trauma issues, emotional trauma issues involving cops from all over the country. And I guarantee you this, that I'm going to say that 60% or 70% of of the factors that officers list when they're talking about suffering from post-traumatic stress is not from the actual incident itself, but the way that their leadership treated them after the incident.
Yeah, we're hearing about it every day. You know, just by, I guess, de facto, we've been teaching a seminar on courageous leadership. And then, of course, Randy, I got to thank you. I think it was over 2 years ago when I had this idea to write a book, The Courageous Police Leader, the survivor guide for combating cowards, chaos, and lies. People can see it right here behind me. You were the first one that said, let's talk about that on the air. And I went on the air with you a couple of years ago and talked about it. And man, you were the only one that would kind of give me a platform to do that. And it's really been an incredible ride since. So I could never thank you enough for that. But we're hearing the same thing, Randy. Almost every day in my inbox, I'm hearing similar stories. And one of the most brutal stories I'm hearing, I know you've heard it, is this is what these cowards like to do. Let's say some sort of complaint comes in. It's complete bogus most of the time. We know that. The body cameras have shown that. But some complaint comes in. They call the officer into the chief's office. And the chief talks about the complaint to the officer. The officer says, well, that's ridiculous. You know, investigator, I didn't do anything wrong. And right then and there, we're hearing this multiple times. This is the tools of cowards, so to speak. So everybody listening needs to understand this is the tool of cowards. The chief will look at the officer and say, we're going to fire you right now unless you resign. Well, that puts an officer in a pretty unfortunate position because they have no legal representation, no union representation, and they're scared. Well, if I don't resign, a termination is going to be on my resume, so to speak. I'll never work in law enforcement again. And so these officers are resigning right then and there without any representation, without any advice. And then, of course, they wake up the next day, they call me or they call you, and they go, what do I do? There's not much they can do after they resign. But this is the tool of cowards. This is what they use. And we're getting contacted by officers saying, well, I want to stay in law enforcement, but I cannot go to another agency that will do this to me. Because when you look on the agency website, Randy, it looks all like roses and glory, right? It just looks like heaven, so to speak. But then they get inside that agency, and unfortunately, we're seeing this more and more. They're finding they're in the middle of hell.
And you know, most Americans are unaware of some certain aspects of law enforcement. And that is that there are approximately 18,000 different police agencies in this country, and 80% of them have less than 20 officers. So in those smaller agencies, very often they do not have strong fraternal organizations or unions. They do not have representation, legal representation in many instances. Many of these are states that are right-to-work states, in which case basically an employer can terminate for whatever reason they want to. So it's really a David and Goliath kind of battle out there for these officers. If they get on the wrong side of the sheriff or the chief, or if politics plays a role, which it unfortunately so often does, they're the ones who are sacrificed.
And then these cowards want to sit back and complain about how it's tough to recruit.
Oh, well, I mean, look at what's happening in law enforcement societally now. You know, we're seeing a diminishment. I think it's about 66% of recruitment has diminished. 66%. So what does that mean in terms of reality? So you have 66% less potential recruits signing up for the police exams and tests. Then what that does is, with that diminishing pool, police agencies then have to drop their standards in order to fill positions. And then you have, it's almost like the self-fulfilling prophecy. Then you have people getting in the job that shouldn't be in the job. And then when they screw up, it ruins it for everybody. So now is the time for leadership to step up to the plate and really make their workplaces a place that cops want to work at. But we're not seeing that in a lot of places.
Yeah, you know, leadership is the number one thing that any employer wants in any profession, and law enforcement including. We like to tout how we need benefits and salary and this and that. But at the end of the day, if you're not working for a good leader that will defend you when you're right, no one wants to work there. And so recruiting is diminishing. And listen, everybody wants to say, oh, it's the media and it's the Ferguson effect. And we get into all that nonsense later. No, listen, I don't care about any of that. you can look at Chief Tim Barfield and chiefs across this country that are standing up for their officers, and they've got people standing in line to work for them because it's all about leadership. See, our leaders, what they've done, Randy, is they've pushed the blame off. Oh, we can't recruit because of the media or politicians or activists or Ferguson. No, you can't recruit because you're a coward. And no one wants to work for a coward. They want to work for people that will stand up for them. Randy, it's the only profession on the planet where you could do everything right and be destroyed.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And you know, at the same time that I hear multiple complaints about leadership, I also hear pride when many officers talk to me, because they actually feel that their leadership, in the ones that are doing it right, they have deep pride in their sheriff or in their chief.
Yep.
And they're not hesitant to talk about it either, which is good, because what that should do is create a deeper environment of ethical leadership.
Yeah. You know, and I know we've talked about a project, Randy. We're not ready to talk about details, but we're going to help out these officers that need to find good law enforcement agencies with great leadership, with great courageous leadership. And we're going to launch this out here, and I think it's going to change the profession, because right now I think you're right. Most civilians out there, most of your community members, they don't understand what's going on behind the doors of these police departments.
No.
All they see is a few Facebook posts, maybe some lip syncing videos. Everything's hunky-dory. These men and women are suffering, and that's why your organization, Wounded Blue, is so important. Kind of tell us about how that came about and kind of where you're going with that.
Sure. So I spent 10 years as a policeman in New Jersey, then 24 with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police. And what ended my career, I didn't really intend to retire when I did, even though I had the time on. But I had a stroke in my police car, and it ended my career. It almost ended my life. And it was a life-changing experience. But one of the things that occurred was something I never expected. And that is, my own department turned its back on me and refused to pay my medical bills. I mean, it was a non-duty injury. It's by law, it's a workers' compensation injury. My department is, like many, self-insured, so they make the decisions about workers' compensation issues, and they just didn't pay my medical bills. They knew they had to. They knew they were legally obligated, but they just said, no, we're not doing it, forcing me to go to court. Mm-hmm. And it took over a year. They ruined my credit, plus all the stress of that issue. And I go to see my sheriff, the guy who I'd served with for 24 years. And I said, Sheriff, how can you treat me like this? And he said, Randy, this isn't personal. It's just business. Just business. Well, so what did that do? It's
bad business.
Yeah. What did that do as far as my thoughts about my own agency, right? My own leadership? Well, you could pretty much guess. But then, because of my radio show, Blue Lives Radio, the voice of American law enforcement, and my visibility in the law enforcement world for being a writer and speaker and commentator, cops from around the country started connecting with me. Not because I could do anything, but simply because I was a voice. And that was, Randy, I got shot in the line of duty. My chief never even came to visit me in the hospital. They're not paying my medical bills. They're not giving me the proper medical attention. And not one, Travis, not two, but hundreds. And I realized.
Oh, I know. We hear from them too. Yeah.
Some of the most egregious cases.
Unbelievable.
Come out of Oklahoma, where you're based.
Don't even get me going, brother. We're going to talk about that in a minute.
Well, so these were heartbreaking messages. And I thought, okay, there's got to be a national resource for these men and women. And I looked and I looked and I looked and I realized that incredibly, there was no national resource. Yeah. So now there is. We launched it during Police Week of this year. And the Wounded Blue has already, we provide, our motto is the most important thing. And that is never forgotten, never alone. Because every one of these men and women feels abandoned by their own agencies. And this is part and parcel of leadership issues. So our organization has already touched the lives of more than 2,000 individual officers since our launch during Police Week of this year, just since May. I have a fully trained and certified peer support team, and we were trained by the best trainers in the country who are Warriors Rest, based out of Oklahoma City. So all of my officers have been shot, stabbed, beaten, run over, screwed up, and screwed over. And we're touching the lives of, we have literally saved the lives of I know personally, of more than 3 officers because they told me so. So we're combating suicide. We're working to solve problems. We're working with legislation to give more protections for cops. And let me tell you, brother, this is a lonely road. And very often leadership sees me as an enemy instead of as an ally, which they should view me as.
Yeah, we're going to get really behind this, Randy. Obviously, there's a bunch of different things out there, and I think the community at large gets confused by that. Not every police organization is in it for the right reasons. We'll kind of leave it at that. But yeah. I know you, brother. I know what you've been involved in. You have been feet on the ground for decades without a dime coming at you. And so this is huge, and I think it's going to do wonders. I think that people don't realize, I don't even think law enforcement realizes that the best research we have is for every line of duty death we see, there's at least 100 officers that lose their careers due to injury. You see, medical technology has been a wonderful thing. It's helped reduce our line of duty deaths from the 70s and 80s, and we were losing over 200 officers a year.
Right.
So we're down in the mid 100s now, as tragic as it is, but we're losing thousands of officers a year to career-ending injuries, and you are right. So many agencies are just leaving them high and dry. They're not supporting them. We know what the pension system doesn't protect a lot of these officers. Can you imagine being a 31-year-old officer, permanently disabled, and not able to work in your career again, not able to make a living again, and you've got kids at home? You're doing amazing things, and we've got to get behind it. Randy, what's the website for people to find out about it?
thewoundedblue.org. That's thewoundedblue.org. And we've now just launched our membership drive. So there's membership available for current or former law enforcement that gives them access to one of the most incredible behavioral health benefits that exists. This is really cutting edge stuff. Most police officers or sheriff's officers, they don't trust their own agency when it comes down to getting help for psychological issues. And so many of us are suffering from post-traumatic stress injury, but they don't want to go for help. Well, now I've created CAPER, the Confidential Assistance Program for Emergency Responders. And for $10 a month, $10 a month, Travis, these officers get access to licensed psychologists from the privacy of their own home via video conferencing, completely confidential. And not only that, their family also gets access to these advisors and therapists, all for $10 a month. It's never been done before. It's going to change lives. It's going to save marriages. It's going to save careers.
Why in the world would an agency not sponsor their entire agency? Because most agencies don't have any type of CERT program or any program or psychology program. I mean, larger agencies do.
Right.
Some are unequal, better than others. But why would an entire agency not sign up everybody for this?
We literally just launched this last week. So this is brand new stuff. And I'm hoping that agencies will come on board with it, because literally for pennies, it gives access to a benefit that is priceless. So not only am I hopeful that agencies will purchase this for their people, but also organizations like FOP lodges, police associations, etc. So this is, but officers can get this on their own too. For $10 a month, it's the best. It is literally the best investment in your own emotional well-being.
Is it 24/7, Randy?
24/7.
Man, let me tell you something. If you're working in an agency and you don't have a psychological program, and your chief or your sheriff goes to their national conference every year to hang out and drink, or maybe go to a few classes or whatever, and they're spending thousands of dollars for that, but they're not paying $10 a month for you, find another agency. I mean, Randy, what's it going to take and listen, I don't want the audience to think, we're obviously early into our series here. We're going to be doing this for quite a long time, launching these every week. I don't want everybody to think, because I've been accused of this, Randy. We'll talk about in a minute things you've been accused of Travis is just hitting everybody that can't defend themselves. He's negative. No, we're not all negative, but there's a lot of negative things out there that needs to be talked about. And by us not talking about it, it's not exposing it, and it's not changing anything. There are certainly good sheriffs out there. There's certainly good chiefs out there. There's certainly great lieutenants and sergeants. But one bad one can ruin an entire community.
Yeah.
And they've been getting away with it, Randy, under the cloak of darkness because everyone's scared to talk. We hear from officers on anonymously all the time saying, this is what's going on in my agency, but everyone is fearful to say anything because cowards also use that. They use a heavy hand. They use vindictiveness to make sure nobody exposes them. Well, guess what? I may not have screw you money, Randy, but I got screw you time. So I don't care what anybody thinks I say or do. We're going to expose it, and it doesn't matter. So I've obviously taken some lumps from this. I've obviously taken some bruises from this. We line this out in the book, not what I've personally dealt with, but if you are going to stand up and do what's right, if you're going to expose the cowards and try to stand for courageous leadership, people will come after you. They will attack you. You are the enemy to them. And I know, Randy, you've been somebody on the front lines for many years. Kind of tell us how that's occurred to you.
Oh,
we don't have all day because I know it's an all day conversation.
Well, I spent most of my police career in Las Vegas, 24 years, and most of that was as a police leader. I came to the department with 10 years experience and then promoted to sergeant within 6 years, which is rather fast for our agency. Mm-hmm. So I spent 14 years as a sergeant and about 5 years as a lieutenant. And I stopped promoting after that because that's the last street rank. And I'm a street cop, and that was where I wanted to be. But I found that in political situations, when I stood up for my troops, when they were right. Now listen, guys screw up, and then it's you got to deal with the screw up. But you deal with it not only judiciously, but with empathy and compassion. Look, everybody makes mistakes. I've made them. You've made them, right?
Yep.
But it's the way you deal with those mistakes. Now, is it when you're dealing with these issues? Is it a matter of the heart or the head? Right? Did somebody screw up because they purposefully, had an ethical lapse, or did they, was it a mistake of, I tried to do the right thing, but I screwed up anyway? Well, you go about it differently. So when I would stand up for my people, and then when I saw some issues take place in upper command, and I pointed it out, I became a pariah. Assignments were denied me. They came after me. I mean, I could go into it in a big way, but I actually got on the wrong side of somebody very, very high up in the department. And they actually came after me to try and arrest me at one point. So believe me, I know from whence you speak. I've seen it. I've lived it. And you know what? It made me a better leader, because when you experience that type of leadership, you understand how it affects the people that you work with and who work for you. And that makes me want to be a better leader.
Yeah, and that does two things. This is another common tool from cowards. It accomplishes two things, Randy. It's designed to shut you up and shut you down, so you don't expose them. But it also accomplishes something that has worked rather well. It silences everybody else from doing what you did, because they look at you and say, holy cow, look what they're doing to Randy, and he was just standing up doing what's right. I better keep my mouth shut. And you know what? That works really well. I have found myself, when I've been in the middle of some of these battles, just like you have, when I look around, not a lot of friends hanging out with me anymore, right? All the people I thought were tight, they were like, hey, man, I can't get involved in this, because people are about me, myself, and I. And a huge trait with courageous leadership is no, it's not me, myself, and I. It's my troops, my troops, my troops. I care about them more than my personal safety or my personal, comfort, so to speak.
I consider myself very fortunate, because early on in my career, I had a leader. He was a sergeant. He wound up becoming the chief of police of my old department. And I saw demonstrated what ethical, courageous leadership was firsthand from this man. He didn't have a college degree. He didn't have the FBI National Academy when I was working for him. He eventually did. He didn't have any letters behind his name, but this guy knew how to treat people. And he knew that if he provided the support and guidance in an ethical, compassionate way that he would get the most out of his people. And it was a valuable lesson to me. He's my friend to this day. And I met him when I was 16 years old as a cadet, which shows you the value and loyalty that you can garner if you are a compassionate, ethical leader.
Yeah, Randy, we have a lot of line officers. And I want to say this as they're listening. When we talk about leadership, it's not about people of rank. I can guarantee you this. I've been promoted, 4 or 5 times. And each time I didn't get any smarter. I didn't get any more wisdom. I just happened to perform well on a test or whatever that was. So that's bogus, right? Everybody's a leader. And I think if law enforcement could embrace this. Now, I know what happens in agencies is the agencies basically say, you need to be quiet. No, you're not a leader because you didn't pass a test or you didn't do this. It's crazy, right? So when we talk about leadership, we're speaking about every single person from the first day officer to the 35-year veteran. So if they're out here listening, Randy, maybe they don't have a rank, but they're inside an agency and they see some problems. What advice would you give them?
Be true to yourself. That's number one. Be true to your own personal code of honor and ethics, and never allow someone to run roughshod over you. Stand up for yourself, stand up for what you believe in, and I guarantee you that you're going to get kicked in the teeth a couple times, but you got to live with yourself more than anything else.
Yeah, and understand this, when you get kicked in the teeth, because that will happen if you stand up for what's right, you know you're doing something right? I mean, that's what I love about it is some things have happened to me in recent months or last couple of years. And every time it happens to me, I just go to my book and go, yeah, I actually wrote about this. This is I'm doing something right. And you either use that, Randy, to fuel yourself to say, I've got to double down and continue to do what's right, or you run away from it. And of course, a lot of people run away from it because comfort is much more nice and involved to be in. But at the end of the day, I think you alluded to it, Randy, you have to sleep at night. You have to get to the end of your career and know you did what was right. And I can guarantee you, even though somebody may be out there taking their lumps or taking their bruise for doing what's right, the person doing it to you, they're not sleeping well at night. They know what they're doing. They know that they have sold out this fine profession to cowards. And so we want to encourage you to continue on and to push the envelope, because that's the only way we're going to get this profession back.
Absolutely. And you know, we're seeing, I don't know that people ever really change, but you can grow. And if you're open to personal growth and professional growth, that just aids you in your personal accomplishments. And by doing so, you can develop yourself as a leader. But most of it comes from within, not from without.
Yeah. Man, it's incredible stuff, Randy. And we've been talking about some serious stuff, and this is not the only time we're going to talk to you. In fact, we do what we call a courageous leadership roundtable. We bring on 3 or 4 leaders once a week, and we just talk about current issues. And so we're going to have to get you in on that order where you're getting to come on and talk with all these other great leaders, because I need people to also understand this. If they're in a bad position, a bad department, there is hope. There's a lot of good places out there. There's a lot of good leaders out there. I wrote this little book and just threw it on Amazon with no marketing, and the thing's gone crazy because I think people are thirsty for leadership. And so I think as a whole, our profession's in a good place. We've just got to either push the cowards out or get the cowards to go in a different direction. But so much of that is political and everything else. But there is hope, I think, and I think you're providing that with what you're doing, Randy. Hopefully we can offer something to that. But getting away from the seriousness for a bit, you've got an incredible life, man. I mean, you have I know you've written several books. Of course, you can find them all on Amazon. Type in Randy Sutton and get those. Let me encourage everybody to get those. You kind of started your, television career with the reality show Cops. That transitioned to, I think you were in Casino. I first saw you in Cops and Casino. I remember the first time I saw you at a conference, I was like a fanboy, right? I was thinking, I don't know what I said to you, but I'm sure I mumbled a little bit. And then I think you recently played another role in the movie. I'm gonna let you just kind of give our audience a couple of pretty cool stories that you've had, kind of being behind a camera and meeting some of these stars out there.
None of this was ever planned. I never planned to be an author. I never planned to be an actor. I never planned to create a charitable organization. But I was very fortunate. When I I left a 30-officer police department to join Las Vegas PD. I was halfway to retirement. It was a very difficult decision. But I wasn't experiencing the personal and professional growth that I really craved. So when I came to Las Vegas Metro PD, I started all over, had to go through the academy again, start my career again. And then suddenly this new reality show pops up, Cops. And the second season, they were shooting in Las Vegas. And the way they chose their officers was they went to a sergeant. They always rode swing shift because that's where the most action was. And they would ask a sergeant, who's a guy that loves to get in the mix? And the sergeants would say, let's try Randy. So the producer would come with me and with just a handheld camera and then watch how I acted. Did I act up for the camera? Did I, was I hamming it up? And so they looked for people who were just doing their job. And I was very fortunate that they got 3 seasons with me and got, I think I was the most featured officer on the show at the time. And so that showed me the power of television. There were people that contacted me that actually joined the police department and then came to me and said, you're the reason I joined the Las Vegas Police Department. Yep. Because I saw you and I liked the way you handled yourself. And so I saw your pride in your department. So it's a huge tool, right? It's an amazing recruiting tool. So from that, one day I get a phone call from a casting director. There's going to be a film shot in Las Vegas, and the director wants realism in the part of a police officer. Would you come down and do an audition? I said, sure. I'm always up for a new adventure, right? So I walk into the old Riviera Hotel. I walk into a suite, and who's standing there? But Robert De Niro and Martin Scorsese.
That's
and
crazy,
they're filming
man.
Casino. And my audition consisted of me telling them war stories about being a Vegas cop. And they said, you got the part. And that's how I got into Screen Actors Guild and then did movies. And I've been doing movies and television roles, small roles. Yeah. My biggest role was I got to play a bad guy. I co-starred in the premiere episode of the television show Las Vegas with James Caan.
That's right.
And that was kind of cool. Well, I just finished filming a movie that has a great personal story for me.
I was hoping to get to that, yeah.
Yeah, it's called The Wish Man.
Yeah.
And it is the true story of the man who created the Make-A-Wish Foundation, Mr. Frank Shankwitz. And in the weird way that the world works, Travis, I met Frank after I had my stroke. And my doctors gave me a very dim prognosis. And I wanted to leave a legacy of something very positive. And I saw Frank telling his story on a newscast. And I said, that's it. I want to talk to people like that from around the country who have given so much to this country about who their personal heroes were, with the idea in mind that everybody could become a personal hero. And that's when I wrote the book, The Power of Legacy, Personal Heroes of America's Most Inspiring People. So I go to meet Frank, and most people don't know this, but Frank created the Make-A-Wish Foundation when he was an Arizona state trooper.
Yep.
And he stayed a cop for 40 years. The man is an honest-to-God, no bullshit hero, right? Yep. So I meet him writing the book. He and I have become very close friends. He's now on the board of directors of The Wounded Blue, and a movie just came out about his life. It's called The Wish Man, and I got to play a role in that too. So, it's really interesting the way that life's journey works. And, it's really to me, it's a pretty cool thing.
Well, I think you said something that everybody needs to hear from a leadership standpoint. You didn't intend to do this. You didn't intend to be an author. You didn't intend to play in movies. And I'm always nervous about people that come up to me, whether it's at a seminar or an event I'm at, and they go, hey, I want to do what you do. I want to teach. I want to speak. I want to write. And I go, whoa, wait a minute. That's not how you get into this and be successful, right? I mean, you're a prime example of that. You just be the best cop you can be. You work hard. Sometimes things happen. Sometimes things don't. But I think that is why you've been so successful, Randy, is this wasn't something that you tried to do, but because of who you are and what you stood for, it happened for you, and you're just so gifted at it. And you've left, I know, by the way, get that book, the Legacy book. Tell us the name of it again, where to get it, Randy.
The Power of Legacy, Personal Heroes of America's most inspiring people. It's on Amazon, and that's the best place.
Yeah, it's an incredible book. I think it's my favorite. I may be biased, but I think it's my favorite. You've written so many great ones. Of course, True Blue. You've written a couple of True Blue ones, and a lot of your proceeds didn't go to you. They went to. I won't even make it up. Just tell us where a lot of your proceeds have gone in recent years through all the writing you've done, Randy.
Well, my first book, True Blue: Police Stories by Those Who Live Them. That's a book I never intended to write, but I had a life-changing experience early in my career. Where I saved the life of a 1-month-old baby in a drive-by shooting, and that night it moved me so much. It was such a significant act for me that I sat in my home and I wrote the story. I didn't have anything to do with it. I just felt like I needed to write it, and I stuck it in a drawer, and there it sat for several years. And then when the World Trade Center was attacked, and we lost 72 police officers. I was so frustrated. I felt like I needed to do something for those men and women. And then I remembered that story that was in that drawer. And I said, wait a minute. Cops all over the country have stories like this. I'm going to ask them to write them. And then I'm going to put them in a book, and I'm going to give all the proceeds to the Widows and Orphans Fund for those cops who were killed. And that's exactly what I did. And that book changed my life. And I didn't take one penny. In fact, I lost about $10,000 because I said all the proceeds are going. So that meant that everything went, even the costs that it cost me. But that was a life-changing experience, and that led me to write my next book, which was all my own stories, called A Cop's Life, which is still selling pretty good. And here's the interesting thing about being a writer. You touch lives in ways that you never could have imagined. I've had, I'm going to say, no less than 5 cops contact me personally and say, Randy, you saved my life with that book. And I said, what do you mean? They said, I thought that I was alone in those feelings that you put out on paper. And he said, when I realized that I wasn't, it saved my life. And that's the thing about law enforcement. We share this common set of experiences, and it affects us. And sometimes we're told that's not normal, but it is normal. It's normal to be affected by the things that we see. And that is part and parcel of why leadership is so vital, because by being a leader, you can actually play a role in the growth in the life of people that you work with. And there's no greater responsibility than that.
Yeah. Randy, you, man, I cannot think of anyone that has left more of a legacy than you. And you still have a lot of years left. And what a journey, brother. You haven't written the biography yet, but I need to read that biography. It's incredible, man. I've always counted you as one of my dearest friends. It's incredible what you've done to this profession. You're my mentor, so to speak. I really look up to you. Tell the audience where they can find you, Randy, where they can reach out to you.
I am so easy to find. First of all, my website, which is the woundedblue.org. That's for my organization. If you want to know more about me, go to randysuttonspeaks.com. That's got all kinds of information. It's got all my cops episodes. It even has my album of classic tunes. And I bet you didn't know that, did you, Travis?
Nothing surprised me with you, brother. Yeah, I mean, whatever you tell me, I'm going to see like, yeah, that's Randy Sutton.
Well, and then I'm on Facebook under the Voice of American Law Enforcement, and listen to my podcast. My podcast on my radio show is on America Out Loud. You can just download it on iTunes. It's Blue Lives Radio, the Voice of American Law Enforcement. Now I have a streaming television show too. It's on Laura Ingram's network. It's called Life Zet, L-I-F-E-Z, and it's the Voice of American Law Enforcement. So I'm about the easiest guy to spot, man. I'm everywhere.
Randy Sutton, the Voice of American Law Enforcement, incredible leader, incredible example of courageous leadership. You've joined us today on Courageous Today. Thank you for being here, and thank you, Randy.
My pleasure, Travis. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.